Good evening and welcome to the Simply Colorful FiberCast. Today's date is September 11th, 2015. My name is Lynn Marquidant and I'm your host. So welcome to my studio. And again, on this day, on September 11th, let's not forget what happened 14 years ago here in New York City. And let's enjoy our freedom and the fact that we can spend an hour together playing with colorful fiber. So welcome. I'm so glad you're here. As you can see, I'm by myself, no more Sarah. I really thank her for being here last week. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Her knitting is certainly inspiring. This week, I'm going to do more. I'm going to show you what I finished on my hooking. I'm going to do more hooking. I'm also going to answer a question about Raggedy Ann's hair. We're going to take some of your texts and your emails, and we're going to talk a little bit about the art of rug hooking. So with that, remember to send emails or texts to lmarquidant@gmail.com, or post your questions or your pictures of what you're working on the Simply Colorful Facebook page or on Google+. So welcome. I hope you have a project, and I hope you've had a good week, albeit short, and probably, if you're like me, tried to fit 5 days worth of work into 4. But it was nice to have Monday off. So why don't let me show you what I've done so far since I saw you last, and then we'll get right into Raggedy Ann before we get down the hook. So here's the mouse that I started the system with. May drop off. You all inspired me to finish my hooking this rug. So it's all hooked. And now, literally last night while I watched the Patriots football game, with my husband and my father-in-law, I sat there and with a needle and thread turned the edge of the rug over, and I kind of basted it shut around a piece of cording so that it's the same width, so that when I step on it, I won't wear out this part of the rug first. And now it's ready to be whip-stitched with some matching wool yarn. Probably I'll use Cascade. And I have to admit, I've not done a whole lot of rug finishing, and it's never been that. It's harder than you would think it is, because you have to kind of overlap the yarn as you go along so that none of the rug warp shows through. And I think I'm going to do it in a lighter color so that it matches this outer part, and so that I don't see any abnormalities in my whip stitching. So anyway, that I will do this winter in front of the TV at night, but I'm thrilled to have all of the hooking done, and I'm thrilled to have you to be able to show it off to. Pretty proud of this. I started this rug in 2009, then I picked it up again in 2012, and I finished it, and I've not changed that to 5. Bob says I should, and I probably will, but right now it says 12. Always remember, if any of you are out there rug hooking, always remember to just like quilts, date them and put your initials. And I actually put my initials here, LM. And then another trick is, before you're finished hooking it, literally write on the fabric your name, so that in 100 years, if it hasn't fallen apart, which it more likely will if it's a rug that you're going to use on the floor. But if they're trying to figure out who actually made the rug and they undo some of the hooking, they actually will see your name written there. Just an idea. I think I did it on this one, or I have to somewhere. But that's next. You know, I'm going to pull that off in the next week or two, and I'm going to finish that one. So, and for anyone, I've gotten a couple of emails from you all from last week saying that you were glad that we were doing something a little different from quilting, just for a few weeks, and that you'd like to try it. And I have to tell you, rug hooking is one of the easiest things to pick up and learn how to do. It literally, when it first was started, you know, there are tales about where it first got its start, but the Romans, I guess, did it hundreds of years ago. But here in New England, the lore is that fishermen, when they were out on boats for a long period of time, were looking for things to do, and they had a hooked nail, and they had burlap, and they had old clothing that they would cut up, and they would use the hooked nail to pull the clothing through. There were times when people would use uniforms, the wool from uniforms, and now it's become, and there were a number of famous rug designers, Pearl McGowan, Joan Mosimer, and we'll talk a little bit about them, who really, in the 1800s, believe it or not, Pearl McGowan was here in Clinton, Massachusetts, got their start, and it really spread through organizations, teachers teaching teachers, through the United States and up in Canada, of course, in Nova Scotia. There is a real early movement there. So there's a lot of history to this, which is really fun, and there are teachers around the country who will do this. If you want to know more, look up ATHA, A-T-H-A, Association of Traditional Hooked Artists, and go from there. So what I did, so before we get into what I'm doing now, which is a mug rug, we're going to make a mug rug tonight, just a little, to put your mug on. I got a question about doing Raggedy Ann hair, doll hair, and I tried to describe it in my IM, but I also said that I would talk about it here, and I'll try to do my best, and I hear that someone's out there, so let me check just to make sure. Oh, hi, Sarah. Sarah says, great job on the rug. Thank you. I'm glad you're out there. That shows that this is working. Thanks. Awesome. So what you want to do to put hair on your Raggedy Ann is find some yarn that you like. I used, this is mohair and wool. Not very fancy. I got it at Joann's, so you can see there was a lot of extra fiber all over it, but it worked okay. Get a needle, a long needle that you can fit the thread through. And then literally you start at one end and you take a little tuck in the muslin, because her head's bald when you start, right? And it's stuffed with fiber. And basically you take a little tuck at the bottom and then you create a loop that's maybe an inch long, and you take another tuck. So there's the first loop. Then you run the thread up to the top and you take a tuck here and then create a little 1-inch loop and take another tuck and then go back down. And you have to go up and down really close to each other so that after a while you start getting an opaque area of your yarn across the back of her head. And then at each end you're going to make a little loop and secure it with another tuck. Now, after you do all of that, sometimes you may find, and I did, that you still have some muslin showing. I don't know if you can see that in there. Now, one option is to take a pen or a magic marker and use the color of your hair and color that in. Another option is to leave it. And then a third option is literally to do a running stitch with your needle and another thing of thread and go across here. Actually, yeah, a running stitch, I guess. And then you can cover up your little tucks there. So it's not precise, but that's how I have done my Raggedy Ann heads. And that's how my mother did the one that she made for me back in 1963. And that's all there is to it. You could cut this, I guess, suppose. You could cut all the hair so that it didn't have the loops, it was all straight. And that's it. Have fun. And send me pictures of your Raggedy Anns and Andys. We'd love to see them. Now let's go to rug hooking. Oh, I'm also going to read you a few verses. A few quotations for a beautiful life. I meant to do that last week, and I didn't get to it. So I am making mug rugs, and this is the latest one. I don't know if you can see that. It's a tree, and it is like coloring. That's all rug hooking is. It's like coloring or painting with wool. But unlike painting or coloring, it is incredibly forgiving, because if you put a color that you don't like, you can just tear it right out, just like Sarah was doing last week on her bird. And she made a marked improvement with literally just taking out some of the wool that was threading, you know what, shredding, and she put in some better wool. So let's see. So the next one I'm going to do while we're here tonight is I'm going to do this one. I drew this on just before we started with a permanent marker, and all it is holly and berries. So 3 holly leaves and berries. And literally within the next hour, I hope to finish this mug rug, and then when we get it done, we'll back it the same way we do all of the rugs. And I actually have another couple of little ones here to show you. So there's a scaredy cat that I did several years ago for Halloween. I thought that was appropriate for Halloween. And if you look on the back, I just folded it over and then put some rug binding and literally hand stitched it on the back. So it finishes it off and it lies flat. I actually keep this in my clothes closet on where I keep my jewelry. So I put my jewelry on top of that. And then one other one that I also keep in my closet, and this actually is a Pearl McGowan, I think. It's a Pearl McGowan rose pattern, and it's not very well done, but you can see this is much smaller. This is number 3 pieces of wool, whereas this one's probably number 6, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. This was done 2008. But it creates a nice little mat, you know? And if you keep it out of the sun and out of the dust, then it won't fade and it won't get dirty. So, that is that. Let's get hooking. I hope you all are out there and you have projects. It's Friday night after all, and it's time for chilling. And I've put my hoop up a little bit flatter than I normally am so that hopefully you can see the hooking. And I'm thinking, just before we went on, I picked out, oh, this is another thing that's kind of fun. So first off, I have some books here put aside. But check out my noodles. I have a whole big, I have way too much wool. And I have this whole big container of noodles. So I am going to pick my colors for my holly out of that. And just before we came on, I was picking out the greens. I'm going to do it very bright. Put this down. I have books down here. And let's see, here's some sort of yellowy red for the berries. And what am I going to do for the background is the key question. I want something that will create contrast and be modeled. There's a very light, I think probably that's what I'll go with. Isn't that pretty? I'll tell you. And Sarah, I'll have you know, I found a big piece of what I think is linen. I don't think it's burlap. I think it's linen upstairs. It's like, 3 feet by 6 feet. And it has nothing written on it, and I'm thinking that's what I could use to make the circle rug or just the scraps, little log cabin type rug with all of these scraps. I thought that would be fun, but I'm not going to start it until I finish the dogs behind me. All right, let's just dive in. And you'll see I have chartreuse, which I love, love, love to use in my rugs. It gives it that spark of color, like a bright purple. I love this color. Love it. Okay, so why don't we, since I love it so much, let's start with that. Whenever you start hooking and you draw your item, stay inside the line. Don't make the mistake of hooking on the line or outside of it, because if you do, then your motifs, or what you are trying to hook, will look huge. It'll just get too big. It's a little tip. I'm not even going to do that. I was thinking of clipping it to make a point, So can you see this? This literally is, I'm going in with my hook, I'm going down, and I'm just pulling up the wool. Norma, if you're out there, I love to hear that was it your mother who used to do this? And don't worry if you didn't have her sit down and teach you. You can learn. And I bet you'll remember a lot of what you saw her doing without even really knowing it. But get that kitchen done so that we can start playing in your studio. Okay, so I did one side. I think I'm just going to do one side of the others because I don't have a lot of this color. And I don't know about you guys, but if I have like a piece of poison color, which is an endearing term actually in rug hooking, like this chartreuse, it's going to give this item a real pop. You can either start with it or finish with it. So I guess you can see I decided to start with it for good or bad. I think it'll be okay. It'll set the tone. Here's another one. Again, I'm just doing the right side of each of the 3 leaves. Oh, and look, this one doesn't even look the same. I dyed a lot of this wool back in the early 2000s. No, that's not the right color. I need to go get, here's another poisony color. Look at this variety. Check this out. So it has a little yellow, and then it goes all the way to white and pink. Mottled wool to hook with is great fun. For those of you out there who have hooked, send me pictures. For those of you who might have one started, maybe this will encourage you to pull it out. I'm pleasantly surprised at how quickly we can get back into it. You will find that it's like riding a bike. You won't have forgotten how to do it. And how quickly you actually can get something done. You know when you're new into something or you're re-energized? Use that energy to finish some things. Or create little new ones. It's pretty classic, isn't it, that I say, yep, I'm going to finish things. And here I am doing a new mug rug. But I wanted to show it to you. So hopefully you can see that I literally have done the outline of almost 3 of the pieces of holly. Keep looking for Okay. And I find that when I do this kind of scrappy rug hooking, that the widths of my worms, you'll hear people call these worms, and they're basically 100% wool slit into long, thin pieces. And the size of the piece or the width of the piece is traditionally numbered, and it's numbered based on the size, and literally the numbers correspond to the number of wool threads that are in theory in each size. So let me give you for example. This is a very thin cut. It's probably a 3 or a 4, meaning that if you looked at under a microscope at this, there would be 3 or 4. I'd have to go look at my machine. Probably 4 actually. 4 threads of wool. On the theory that there are, let's see, an 8 is a 1/4 of an inch, so there are 32 threads to an inch of 100% wool from door mills, for example. Oh, I hear a buzz. Who's out there? I'm glad you're out there. Oh, KB. Happy Friday and congratulations. KB in Pennsylvania, Karen, also known as Karen, says, great camera angle. Cool to see you hooking again. Oh, good. Something different, right? She says, it's Halloween costume season here at my house. Tonight I'm formulating a pattern for the newest Batman cowl. It's like Project Runway up in here. That's awesome. You have to send pictures. The newest Batman cowl. Is the cowl what the Batman wears over his head? I don't even know. All I can think of is a cowl neck. Cowl turtleneck. I'm glad you're out there, and congratulations on your new job. Hey, oh, Leslie Turner. She says, thanks for answering on the Raggedy Ann. She says she won't be able to watch the program tonight. She's going out to eat with her daughter and family, but will catch the archive. And she says, thank you. Well, good. Well, Leslie, please send me a follow-up email if it doesn't make sense. It's really trial and error. And send a picture of your doll. And I hope you had a good dinner. Aw, Maureen in Pennsylvania. Hi, Maureen. How are you? She says, what a beautiful rug. I missed you last week. I had to do a sleep study last Friday. Ooh, I'm so curious. Hopefully all went well. And last Friday night. Well, very interesting. Hey, Lorna. Hi, Lorna. Lorna says, what beautiful work you do on your hooking. I'm curious about your hoop and how do you secure your fabric. I see you pressing the edges. Take care, Lorna. Well, hi, Lorna, and I will show you. I actually have tried several different, what they call a frame, a hooking frame. Puritan hooking frames have been making frames for 100 years or more. They're actually out of Mayflower Textiles, out of Franklin, Massachusetts, but Puritan frames, and I have one of those around here that I'll find some other weekend. They're good. This one is actually a Townsend frame that I got a few years ago, and I absolutely love it. It is, it has these sort of rug tines, very sharp, sticking up around it. And it is adjustable in all levels. It's very heavy, and literally it catches the rug, and I love it. And like I say, there are many different versions out there. This one I got after I got the Townsend rug slitter from Beeline, Townsend Beeline. And I don't have that out, but I'll bring it out next week. And that allows you to cut the different worms and their sizes. And Townsend just did a spectacular job on that, made out of stainless steel, and just a beautiful piece of equipment that I saw this advertised. I think I saw Gene Shepard using it out on the West Coast, and I have not been disappointed. Because look at how nicely that stays taut. You want it taut when you're doing your hooking. So that's it. From Townsend, or it was a few years ago. I think they're still around. For those of you who hook out there, isn't it interesting how it's such a cottage industry, rug hooking? There are suppliers and there are pattern makers that literally have been making patterns for hundreds of years, and they literally will sell the pattern rights and the big screens. Some of them are literally drawn from, well, I don't know much about this, but some of the patterns years ago, like frost patterns, I think, there were literally metal plates created with dots, and then you would go across on the dots with some pounce it with whether it's chalk or something, and then you pull it off and then you draw around it. A lot of them are hand-drawn from a master. So now I just get more scrappy on these things, and you know, probably if I wanted to be a little creative, I could get a darker green for the ridge in the middle of the holly leaf. Gonna get a real dark piece of green. Do an awful lot of talking here, aren't I? Not hooking very fast. So how was everyone's week? Hopefully not too bad. I know it was back to work for a lot of us and back to school, and even if nothing in your routine changed, oftentimes this time of year can feel a little hectic because it used to when we were little and going back to school, right? Again, I'm going to do the vein in 3 places, all the same. In design, repeat is king. This is a perfect thing to do when you are listening to the radio or a podcast or something, a book on tape. It's very meditative, and let's see. There we go. And soothing, which is why, like knitting, it is a really good, fun craft for us to gather around. See my scissors here? They're bent on purpose so that you can get right up next to the ply of the rug hooking and just cut. So Joni, I wonder how Joni's doing in Hawaii. If you're out there, Joni, hi. We're thinking of you. Quite envious. For those of you who might not have been on last week, Joni wasn't doing anything. She watched FiberCast last week, and from her iPad, not her big screen TV, and she reported that she wasn't doing anything because she was preparing for her trip to Hawaii. And literally, Sarah, who's been to Hawaii several times, mentioned a quilt store in Maui. And lo and behold, Joni knew of it because Joni was heading out to take a class at that quilt store. Don't you love that? It's a little hot here for September, I have to tell you. We almost hit a heat wave. We might have in some areas, with 3 days of over 90 degrees this past week. That's right. Since I've seen you, since we had FiberCast, Bob and I went down to Mom's house. Mom, if you're there, hi. Mom's probably out being social. Anyway, we had such a nice time. The weather was perfect, and we did some painting of trim. And of the different chores, I don't mind that chore. Of course, it's much more fun to do with my husband, who did all of the high work, and I could take breaks and go for walks with my mother. So I was spoiled in that respect. Then I had a delightful thing. Let's see. Bob and I never quite, well, eventually we did, but we had quite a few discussions about the primer being oil-based and the finish coat being latex. And at one point, he was asking me again about the finish coat and how he thought it was oil. And he was up on the ladder, and I was down at this can, and I just shook my head, and I said, Bob, it's latex. And I went to tip it to show him and point him, and I was being very, theatrical and demonstrative, and like once and for all, I wanted to solve it. Don't you know I had left the top ajar, so I ended up pouring paint all over the ground. So that was number one. But I scooped it right up. I thought for sure we'd run out of a gallon of paint. We did not run out of it last weekend. Anyway, the other thing I did was later in the weekend, again having to do with paint that's oil or latex. Bob was up on the roof out back, and he needed some more paint, so he handed me the paint. I went, he had a little Coke bottle that he had cut out, or a 2-liter Coke bottle that he cut the bottom off of. So it was like that. And it had great paint in it. So I went over to the latex paint, the finished paint, and I poured that right into his little container, and I brought it back to him. And I looked up, and I noticed that what he was painting was not shiny or finished, and realized that I just poured latex paint into his oil-based primer cup. So there he was, sitting up on the roof in the beating down heat, and I had to go find myself another 2-liter bottle of Coke. I had to cut it up. I had to throw out the paint that I had just ruined then. Ugh. And then I ran back and got the oil-based paint, poured it into this new container, and brought it back over to him. This is fun. These colors are so pretty and bright. Kind of hope you can see this. See that? I meant to look up how many days we have left till Christmas. Hoo-hoo. Okay. Ooh, this is like a bright orange. That's okay. And again, when I do my berries, I'm staying inside the line so that they don't come out huge. And just like with my quilting, I'm not a very precise hooker. I mentioned we watched the New England Patriots. I hope people are going to enjoy their football this weekend. Here in America, anyway. Tomorrow is big doings around here in Hopkinton. We are celebrating, as I think I mentioned a few weeks ago, our 300th, the 300th anniversary of our town. And tomorrow we have a arts, which happens every year actually, but it may be extra special because we're celebrating the 300th, but it's called Poly Arts, and it's up on the Common, and vendors come and sell their artwork or their wares or their crafts, and it's a fun time. There's a new fountain that has been reinstalled, refurbished and reinstalled, and now the water is coming through it up on the Common, so that's exciting. And then tomorrow night we have food vendors coming around to the high school and middle school, and then we have fireworks. So, and I hear we haven't had fireworks here in 30 years in this town, so I think that will be fun. And then, but before that, all afternoon, I will be at Dolly meeting. And I need to make some food and refreshments. I'm trying to think of what to make tomorrow that won't be too taxing, because you know me, I don't love to cook. But we'll come up with something yummy. I'm outlining these berries in the white because I want to see them pop. Oh, and I have an idea for our mystery quilt. I have the basic idea. Just have to write the pattern. Try and make my background be kind of squiggly. Oh, there's talk of having one of my cousins, another cousin, come on and quilt with us come the end of the month. Her name is Violet, and she has been making a quilt with her grandmother, and I think that'll be really fun, and we'll have the sound working all right, and we'll get her in front of us, and I'd love to see what she makes. As I say, I usually, when you're hooking, you want to kind of be relaxed because you don't want to tense up, and you want to keep your back as straight as you can. So in this case, I have this pulled up over me, and usually I'd have my frame down, tilted a little bit. But as I say, I wanted you to be able to see it. Now I'm getting into a situation where I can't really see where I'm putting my hook. There we go. So I think I was mentioning that with these little scrappy mug rugs, I use worms of different sizes. And that's okay. It won't look as consistent. And the theory is you're supposed to pull the loops up as high as they are wide. So let's say I'm using a number 4, which remember, if If an inch has 32 strands of the wool, then a number 4 has 4 strands. When I pull it up, the pile should be 4 strands high as well. But when you're using different widths of your noodles, then you kind of just have to pick a happy medium and try and keep the pile as close to that as you can. Not a big deal. At the end, you're going to block your rug anyway, kind of like you do a sweater, where you take a wet, well, no, I guess it's not really like a sweater, is it? You take a wet towel, you put it over your hooking, and you basically take a hot iron and you steam it. It gets moist, but then it flattens right out. And it's tricky on bigger rugs, like the one behind me. It really is curvy. So I'll have to do that in phases. I'm thinking just on my ironing board. I'll just do parts of it. So what else is new? For work, for me, we have an event happening in Ohio next week in Columbus. I don't have to go, but all of they have a government IT conference there in Columbus, so that's good. And the following week it's in Georgia, in Atlanta. See how I just pull this tight? It's amazing, this frame. Let's see. My Thompson frame is creaking a little bit. I may need to oil it. I haven't used it in a long time. All right. See that so far? It's coming together. You can't go wrong with red, green, and white. Let's see who's out there. Jean, I bet, is preparing. Ooh. Here is something. This will be a boxy pouch. I'm using Ohio State fabric. Will be a gift. Zipper is in. It's all downhill now. Amen. Let me look at this. Oh, that's great. It's a red zipper right across the top, right? So this is neat. Can everyone see that? Going right across the middle is the red zipper, and she's going to make that into a boxy pouch. BSM, hi. Ah, Brenda from Kentucky. Thank you, Brenda. She says, I forgot to sign. That's what she's working on. Awesome. I just made my plane reservation, sort of in your neck of the woods, for leaving West Virginia on October 12th. Actually going to leave out of Pittsburgh after we see the West Virginia game. Love your Ohio fabric. Ooh, Maureen, I'm psyched to hear what you said. Maureen from PA says she doesn't rug hook, but this has inspired me to finish up my cross-stitch project. Oh, that's great. I'm so glad to hear that. It does feel good. It's not as exciting, really, but it's just as satisfying to finish up things that you have here already. Like this rug, I'm very happy about that. I feel very accomplished. And the one behind, because it's always been hanging over me since 2009. Not that I've really labored over it, but it just, you know, I always knew it was there. I had to finish it. Oh, welcome to our new subscribers. Who uses the National Quilters Circle, NQC? They want me to be an ambassador. Did I tell you guys about that? Ooh, there's a moth. Moths around wool are not good. Joyce's mug rug was really what inspired me to get working on my rug here. For those of you who didn't sign in last week, there's Joyce's mug rug. It's for someone who likes tea. It's perfect. Okay, let's keep going. Whoa, where's their time going tonight? I can't believe what time it is. Just going to keep going with this color, I guess. Oh, Maureen, you'll have to post a picture of your cross stitch. Sandra, if you're out there, I hope you're feeling better. And Jen, I hope you're having a good trip up here in the States from Perth. And there are so many of you that I just love to get your emails and your nice thoughts and cards. Hello to Maggie. Hello to Colleen. Hello to Lorna. Hello to Evelyn. Ann up in Canada. there's serious talk in these parts of taking a trip to Missouri, to the Missouri Star Quilt Company. Wouldn't that be fun? If you want to make a really nice point, actually cut your wool loop and have one piece of wool coming up, going one way, and then go right back down to that same hole and pull up a second piece of wool to have it go that way, and you can make a nice point, much pointier and cleaner than if you tried to make a loop look like a point. Go. The boys are sounding good downstairs. Carl's wife came, Mary Ann, and she was telling me just before FiberCast started, she was telling me about their trip to the Grand Canyon and how awe-inspiring it was, and I could relate to that. She also said they drove through Sedona, which is beautiful, and then they also went to Monument Park, which I think is in Utah, I think. And they said that, she said that was beautiful too. Lots of big rocks that glaciers just placed there. Made me want to take a road trip out west. But you know what? I like being right here right now. It's so nice to be in the home studio. Okay, so there's 1, 2, almost done. I'm going to mix it up with a little, throw in a little chartreuse here where we don't expect it. See if it looks silly or exciting. No, it's going to look good. Different. I'm cutting off all the little ends so I can show it to you. And I think what I'm going to do in our last few remaining minutes is try to outline the rest of the leaf so that you can see what it's going to look like. And then literally all that's going to be left is just filling in the background. And maybe putting a border on, but I don't know. Not sure it's going to need it. making all sorts of creaking noises around here. Oh. Okay, one more on this side. Who started their guilds again? We had our guild meeting started up this Tuesday. All right, well, we didn't get to any rug hooking history, so we'll do that next time. We'll talk a little bit more about Pearl McGowan and how she got her start here in Clinton and how she was a legal secretary in West Boylston. And we'll learn about how she decided that the way that she could grow her rug hooking art was to teach other teachers. And we'll see some of her beautiful rugs and her fine shading. And this is what we've done so far. So you can kind of see the outline of the holly and then our tree. Let me check to make sure that I caught everyone who's out there, and then I will bid you adieu. Just want to make sure I've said hi. The system seems a little slow. Oh, there's Maggie! Hi, Maggie. She says, I'm enjoying watching you hook the mug rug. I was just making some mug rugs this afternoon for a friend of mine, but I'm quilting them. She says, I've never done any rug hooking. Have a great week. Maggie in New Hampshire. Well, I would love to see your quilted mug rugs. It's the same idea. I'd love to see that. And I'm glad you're out there. And I'm glad you're doing it. And if you ever want to try rug hooking, it's so darn easy. And up in New Hampshire, of course, you have in, is it Guild, New Hampshire? You have Door. And they have all the supplies you need. But you know that, I'm sure. Anywho, I think that's it. For those of you who wrote in, thank you. Thank you for watching. Share FiberCast with a friend. And be creative, and we'll see you next Friday night at 8 p.m. right here in the Simply Colorful studio. Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining.